The barista already knows your order. Large black coffee, no sugar, no room for cream. She has been making it the same way for 3 years, and she has never once gotten it wrong, which you respect more than she probably realizes. You come in every Tuesday, usually around 8:15. You sit at the corner table by the window, the one with a slightly short leg that someone propped up with a folded receipt sometime before you started coming here. The receipt is still there. You have never moved it. Her name is Nina. She has decided, sometime in the past year, that you probably work in finance. Something about the way you read rather than scroll. She is not entirely wrong about the instinct. She knows your first name. She does not know that the brick building across the street, the one with the green awning over the side entrance that she glances at a dozen times every morning without registering it, belongs to you. That is the part nobody ever sees. From outside, you look like any other man with nowhere particular to be on a Tuesday morning. Quiet, unhurried. The espresso machine hisses behind the counter. Someone near the door is watching something on his phone with the volume just loud enough to be inconsiderate. A man in a navy suit checks the time, then his phone, then the time again. Normal people. Normal morning. Normal everything. You take a sip and look at the building. The previous owner had let it go the way people let things go when they stop paying attention rather than when they actually give up. Lobby lights flickering on the second floor. 3 vacant suites sitting empty for over a year. Deferred maintenance on the HVAC, the elevators, and the parking structure out back. 83 spaces with faded white lines and a payment kiosk that jammed every time it rained. Most people who walked past it saw an aging property with problems. You saw a landlord who had checked out. Those are not the same diagnosis. The building is 94% occupied now. The kiosk was replaced for $3,200. The second floor lights have worked without interruption for 2 years. Monthly net, after management fees, insurance, and reserves, runs $21,400. Clean, done, moving on. You look back at your coffee. Because the building was not where it started. It started on a Wednesday evening in October, 11 years ago. You were 27. You worked a job in regional logistics coordination for a mid-sized supply company, the kind of work you described differently depending on how interested the person seemed, which was usually not very. The paycheck arrived on Fridays. The job was stable. Those were its 2 virtues. That evening, an accident 2 miles up the main road blocked traffic and pushed you down a side street you had never taken before. You were tired. You were thinking about what was in your refrigerator. You almost missed it. The lot was full. Not mostly full, not filling up. Every space taken, and a white cargo van idling near the entrance, waiting for one to open. You slowed without meaning to. The storefronts behind the lot were mostly dark. A closed shoe repair place. A tax office with paper sunblockers still in the windows from summer. A small diner whose handwritten hours sign had been there long enough for the tape to curl at the corners. The area was not thriving. The lot was packed at 6:40 on a Wednesday evening. And the only thing anyone had done about it was put up a sign near the entrance, handwritten in fading blue marker on a piece of cardboard, for sale. You pulled over, sat there with the engine running for about 8-minutes, watching. A woman in hospital scrubs fed the payment machine. A delivery driver took the last open spot. 2 more cars came in and circled slowly. You were not thinking about investment returns. You were thinking about why this particular piece of cracked asphalt was full when everything around it looked like it was winding down. You wrote the number from the sign into your phone and drove home. You told nobody. It felt too small to mention. The owner was a man named Richard, 71 years old, retired electrician, had owned the lot since 1989. When you called, he sounded genuinely surprised that anyone was interested. He had listed it mostly because his daughter had been asking him to simplify his life for 2 years, and he had finally stopped arguing with her. The 2 of you met at a diner 3 blocks from the property. A Tuesday afternoon, corner booth, coffee that came in the kind of heavy ceramic mug that has been the same in every diner since approximately 1974. You expected a negotiation. Instead, Richard talked for the better part of 2 hours. About his grandchildren, about a fishing cabin up north he had been meaning to fix since 2014 and had not touched, about a parking gate sensor that broke every time it rained and always, without fail, broke on a Sunday. You listened more than you spoke. You asked questions and let the answers go where they wanted to go. By the time the check came, you knew something important. The value was not in the asphalt. It was in the movement, 83 spaces in a location where people needed to park and gave the price almost no thought at all. The demand had been invisible because it had always been met, quietly, without anyone paying attention. That is what made it overlooked. That is what made it interesting. 6 weeks later, it was yours. For the first month, everything worked the way you had hoped. Daily reports came in clean, numbers were consistent, and there was a quiet satisfaction in checking them before work and finding nothing wrong. Not exciting, just right. Then the city announced a road reconstruction project, 4 blocks away, starting in the spring. At first it seemed like background noise. Then the orange cones appeared, and 1 lane closed, and the detour route started pushing traffic away from the surrounding streets. By the second month, occupancy was down nearly 40%. Revenue followed. You remember sitting at your kitchen table at 11 at night, the city going quiet outside, staring at a page of numbers that looked worse than the week before. Not a catastrophe, just that specific kind of uncomfortable that follows you from room to room and sits near you while you try to think about something else. A friend suggested the previous owner had probably known this was coming. Another said you should consider cutting your losses before it got worse. You went back to the lot instead. Walked the surrounding blocks at different hours, watched where people parked when the main entrance backed up, watched where they did not. The demand had not gone anywhere. The construction had made access inconvenient, not unnecessary. Those were different problems with different solutions, and you had confused them long enough. So you waited, not blindly, just patiently. The project finished in March. Traffic came back. And then, for reasons that had everything to do with the improved road and nothing to do with luck, occupancy climbed higher than it had been before the cones ever appeared. Within 6 weeks, the lot was clearing more per month than the day you bought it. You had spent 11 months watching something that looked like failure resolve into something better than the original. You never told anyone about those 11 months. There was not much to say. You had learned to tell the difference between a problem that was permanent and one that had not finished yet. That lesson was worth more than the lot. What followed was not a strategy so much as a habit of looking. The same opportunity kept appearing in different forms, an asset that worked, owned by someone who had stopped caring enough to optimize it. A commercial laundry facility on the edge of an industrial district, solid contracts with 3 hotels and a dozen restaurants, run into the ground through inattention rather than any flaw in the model itself. A self-storage property with 91 units, most of the doors needing paint, seller convinced it had hit its ceiling at 67% occupancy. A refrigeration repair company whose owner had spent 24 years building something reliable and was now genuinely ready to hand it to someone who would keep it running. None of it glamorous, none of it the kind of thing you would mention at a dinner party, even if you were going to mention any of it, which you were not. Your accountant at the time, a careful, unsentimental man named Paul, who wore the same style of wire-rimmed glasses for the entire 7 years you worked together, reviewed your Year 5 portfolio summary and said, without particular enthusiasm, that he had never in his career seen a client so systematically committed to acquiring businesses that nobody at a dinner party would describe as impressive. You said thank you. He said that was not a compliment. You said you knew. He scheduled the next quarterly review and ended the call. Your closest friend, a man named Michael, has known you since before any of this. He still drives the 2009 Camry he bought the year you both graduated. The air conditioning stopped working properly in 2019, and he keeps meaning to get it looked at. He is the kind of person who remembers everyone's birthday without being reminded, and never once mentions that he does. A few summers ago, the two of you were sitting outside at a barbecue place you had both liked for years, a table slightly too small for everything on it, sharing a pitcher neither of you needed to finish, when he asked the question most people never think to ask. Not what do you do? Not how is work? He put his cup down and looked across the table and said, what are you actually building? You looked out across the parking lot for a moment before you answered. Options. Michael laughed and shook his head. You always give the weirdest answers. Maybe. But it was the most accurate one available. The goal had never been a number. It was the ability to spend a Tuesday morning wherever you wanted, the ability to say no without explaining yourself, the ability to walk away from things that were not worth your time and toward things that were. The money made those things more durable. That was the whole of it. Last winter, Michael called on a Sunday afternoon. You were reading. He said he wanted to run something by you, which with Michael usually means he has already decided and wants someone to be excited with him. He had found a location. A small sandwich shop in a strip center 12 minutes from where he lived. The previous tenant had walked away mid-lease. Equipment still in the kitchen. Owner willing to transfer the remaining 7 years at a reduced rate because he needed the space filled before quarter end. Michael had been thinking about doing something like this for years. He had the savings. He had done the research, or the version of research that feels thorough when you want something to work. He sounded the way people sound when they have already convinced themselves and are now looking for confirmation. You asked him to send you the lease. He sent it that night. You rate it twice. The rent escalation clause was structured to increase 8% annually, compounding, which over 7 years would more than double his monthly payment from the number he had used to build his projections. The exclusivity terms were narrow enough that the landlord could place a competing tenant in the same strip center without technically violating them. There was a personal guarantee clause on page 11 that most people never reach, which meant if the business failed, Michael's house was involved. He had not modeled any of this. Nobody had told him to look. You did not call him that night. You sat with it for a day. Then you wrote him an email, 4 paragraphs, framed as something you had been reading about commercial leases generally, nothing specific to his situation, walking through 3 things worth checking in any food service lease before signing. You mentioned rent escalation structures. You mentioned exclusivity language. You mentioned personal guarantees and how they tend to appear quietly on page 10 or 11 of standard templates. He called 3 days later. I ran the numbers with the actual escalation rate, he said. Yeah, it doesn't work. No. There was a pause. How did you know to look at page 11? I read a lot. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said he was going to keep looking, that the right location was probably still out there somewhere, that he appreciated you going through it. You said, of course. You said he would find something better. The call lasted 4 more minutes and covered nothing important. After you hung up, you sat in your apartment and thought about a man who remembers every birthday and never mentions it, driving a car with broken air conditioning because something else always comes up, coming this close to signing a document that would have attached everything he had spent a decade saving to a guarantee he did not know was there. You did not write him a check. You did not tell him what you knew or how you knew it. You just made sure he read page 11. Sometimes that is the only thing available. Sometimes it is enough. It happened on a Thursday afternoon in November, in the laundry room on the 3rd floor of your building at 4:22 in the afternoon. You were not in a boardroom. You were not at a closing table or on a call with anyone significant. You were moving a load from the washer to the dryer, one item at a time, when your phone buzzed on top of the machine. The sender was your accountant, David. Subject line, Q3 summary, final. You opened it with one hand, holding a damp shirt with the other. Read the first page, then the second. Set the phone face down on top of the machine and looked at the wall for a moment. In the hallway outside, a door opened and closed. Someone's dog barked twice from the floor above. The dryer buzzed to say it was ready. According to the latest valuation, the portfolio had crossed $800 million in total asset value. You finished moving the laundry, pressed start on the dryer, picked up your phone, and walked back upstairs. You made dinner, pasta, nothing involved, and ate at the kitchen table with the window cracked, November air coming in cold and faintly damp. Below, the city moved at its usual pace, taxis and delivery trucks and people walking dogs and all the 10,000 ordinary things that happen on a Thursday evening in a city that does not know or care what is sitting on anyone's kitchen table. There was something in your chest that was not pride and not relief. It was the feeling you get when a long and complicated calculation finally resolves cleanly. A quiet rightness. A recognition. You thought about a 27-year-old sitting in a car with the engine running, watching a parking lot fill up in the dark, writing a phone number into his phone, saying nothing to no one. You thought he would not believe it. You thought he had earned every quiet Friday that led to it. Every Saturday that looked like nothing from the outside. Every deal nobody saw. Every moment of staying quiet when explaining himself would have been so much easier. Then you washed the dishes and went to bed. Tuesday morning. Corner table. The barista sets your coffee down before you have finished sitting. Large black, she says. I know. You nod. She moves on to the next order. Your notebook is open beside the cup. Near the back, a new name sits at the top of a blank page. Daniel Mercer, 63 years old. Owner of a regional equipment rental company, 14 locations across 4 states, in business since 1997. 4 days ago, he updated his profile with a single sentence, exploring next chapter. Most people would scroll past it. You wrote it down. Below his name are 3 questions. Not a plan yet, just the beginning of a framework for a conversation you might have in a few weeks somewhere neutral, over a lunch where you let him talk for the first 40 minutes. Maybe it leads somewhere. Maybe it does not. The best opportunities rarely announce themselves. They usually arrive looking like something else entirely. Across the street, the building continues doing what it has done every morning for 4 years. People arrive, people leave, rent gets paid, a problem somewhere inside it gets solved without anyone calling you. The way good systems are supposed to work. Nina glances at the building, without realizing she does, it almost every morning. She does not know the parking structure behind it is yours. She does not know the storage facility 2 blocks east, the one she walks past on her way from the train, generates $4,100 a month. She knows you come in every Tuesday, that you tip well, that you always seem to be turning something over quietly in your mind. She is not wrong about that. You close the notebook, finish your coffee. Outside, the city moves at its ordinary pace, enormous and indifferent, doing what cities do on Tuesday mornings, regardless of what anyone inside them has quietly accumulated. Somewhere out there, 22 different unremarkable businesses are running without you. That is enough. That is more than enough.